Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda and I am here with my weekly wrap-up. Lighting is weird because this is a weird time of the year for lighting. Like if I turn my little light on, it's too bright. It's just weird. I live in Oregon, we're gray. I'm doing the best I can. Also, this may end up being a little bit of a jumpy video because I'm just dealing with the final dregs of the sinus infection I had last weekend. Might have to stop and cough periodically. Okay. I actually had some things to talk about this week. Let me do some housekeeping stuff. First of all, BookTube prize. You can still sign up to be a judge for next year's BookTube prize. I'm going to link the call for judges video down below. This was the first year I did it and I loved it. You do not have to participate in every round, although you can't just participate in the last round. You have to participate in at least one other round. I did, 3 of the 4 rounds? I think there's 4 rounds, octo, quarter, semifinal. I did 3 of the 4 rounds. I did the first, third, and fourth. Next year, I plan to do the second, third, and fourth, only because spring break and it shortens my reading time. And I'm going to be doing nonfiction again. I had a great time doing nonfiction this year. But you can sign up for nonfiction or fiction or both. I know a lot of people who do both, and sometimes they'll read fiction and sometimes they'll read nonfiction. So yeah, I would highly consider reading it. And I know that it sounds like 6 books each round. That sounds like a lot. It really isn't. Plus, if you do, you do an early round and then you keep doing later rounds, you start getting books you've already read, so it's fewer books to read. But I really enjoyed it and I highly recommend people consider it. And maybe this is something that you want to do. If so, just check the video down below. Second, next week is Thanksgiving week. I may not even be online much. I do have a video going up on Tuesday. It is my December TBR pile of possibilities going up on Tuesday. And on Thursday, provided it happens, and provided I can do my biblio adventure to Grand Gesture Books tomorrow, Saturday, which would be today as you're seeing this, and I get good video, I will have a biblio adventure. If not, I'm not going to have anything on Thursday. In the United States, that's a holiday. And then I'll be back with my weekly wrap up. But I may not even be watching videos during that week because I am cooking. And also I have to clean. There's a lot of work to do. So that is just up on that. And then I wanted to touch on a video I saw today. I wasn't going to talk about this, but then I saw Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading. I saw her video today, and I might be interpreting this different than what it was. But Kelly is possibly the sweetest person on BookTube, and I highly recommend you follow her if you don't already. But she addressed a comment she had gotten about why aren't you talking about what's going on in the world? And she went on and she explained why she didn't, and she had very good reasons to. And I just want to say I support her completely, 100%, and I respect it. If you watch this channel, you know I run my mouth. And I don't always separate politics from reading or whatever else is going on. And I'm pretty out there with how I'm feeling about things. That is my choice. This is my channel. I choose to do that. I understand that may not be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. Kelly's channel is Kelly's channel, and she can do it however she wants. And just because she chooses not to address this does not mean she believes a certain thing or votes a certain way. It just means she doesn't want to talk about it on her channel. And that is that's perfectly okay. That is okay. You're great. I know that when I kind of go political, I may lose viewers. I recognize that. I don't want to lose viewers, but I know that can happen. It can happen even if it's not political. I'm going to say something later in this video, not at all political, may cause me to lose viewers. Just telling you that right now. And that's okay. But if you decide to unsubscribe from a channel or leave a channel because they didn't say something you think they should have said, maybe just take a moment to consider that. Because they don't actually owe you to do that. It's their channel. So just putting it out there. Please go check out Kelly's channel. She's fantastic. She's wonderful, and I support her. And let her have her channel the way she wants it to. And also, I may talk politics. Looking at my books, I probably am going to talk a little bit of politics this week, because I don't compartmentalize well. That's why. There you go. So I have 4 books that I finished this week, and I have actually quite a lot to say about 3 of them. One of them I've already said quite a bit, so I won't say that much about. So I'm going to get right to the books that I'm reading. Now, as I just said, I may say something not even political that may cause people to leave my channel, and here it is. This week I read Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaghy, and this is a very widely loved book. I understand it. I did not like it. I did not like this book. It did not work for me, and it's a me thing. My issues with this book. So the setup of this book is there is a woman who is going to, she's Australian, but she spent time in Canada, and now she's in Scotland to re-wolf, to bring the wolves back to this area in Scotland. They had already done this in Canada, in Alaska, and in the United States. And, you know, it's a thing that happens. And I was actually really interested in that. That's kind of something I'd like to read about. And it's what happens there. And that to me sounds like an excellent story. The problem is there's so much more in this story, and there's just too many issues. Too many issues. There's the whole environmental part of it with the wolves, the political part with the wolves. She has an interesting synesthesia variety. There's that. There's issues, there's daddy issues, there's domestic abuse issues, there's sister issues, there's a love story, there's just a lot in this book. And I was like, you need to half that much so that you can concentrate on a story and not just try to stick all of the issues in it. I also felt that the end was simultaneous, at the same time, I can't talk today, at the same time, ridiculous and utterly predictable. So I'm really sorry if I offended you all with that. I am picky. These are my issues, but that was not a book that worked for me. So I did do it on audio. I don't know if those issues would or would not have been as big a deal to me if I had read it. Sometimes that does make a difference. Sometimes it doesn't. I don't think the ending would have made a difference. It would have made a difference with the ending, but yeah, that's just really not a book for me. So there, I'm sorry. I know everyone loves this book. I just didn't work for me at all. The second book I finished was Othello by William Shakespeare, and I have an entire video about this and about how much I hate mass market paperbacks, and I will link to that down below. It came out this past Wednesday, so I don't need to say anything more about Othello. So my next book, I have a lot to say. I'm excited about this next book because this was off my 2024 Do Not Destruct list. I was saving it for November, for Nonfiction November. I have had this book for literal years. Finally got to it. And it's Liar, Temptress, Soldier, Spy, 4 women undercover in the Civil War. So obviously nonfiction for Nonfiction November. It's also my join book because they joined the war effort. And I was a little apprehensive because right before this, I had read The Demon of Unrest. And you can go see my video last week. Halfway through this book, the election happened, and it really changed the book. And that book was actually, there's a foreword to it, was specifically written in response to January 6th. So this was written 10 years ago. So back in the day. In this book, we follow 4 women, 2 for the Union and 2 for the Confederacy. So I'll start with the women, the Union women. First, we have Emma Edmonds, who's also Edna Edmonds' son, who presents as Frank Thompson. So she enlists as a man to fight for the Union. She is very devout. She feels very called to help defeat slavery. Slavery is a moral wrong in her book, and she feels really called to this. I don't want to say this is a problem. I want to say this is it was just different because this book was written in 2014 and it's 2024, and our language around these things have sort of changed. So at the beginning of the book, I was really wondering, is this a woman who's undercover or is this a trans character? And I understand that when Karen Abbott wrote this book, we wouldn't have talked about trans characters in the same way. Trans people, I should say. She wasn't a character. She was a real person. And so it took me a while with her character. Again, this is not a flaw of the book. This is just time, and the times change. It took me a while to kind of figure out where we were going with her, what was actually going on with her. I don't think it's a spoiler to let you know, because if you do choose this and you end up with the same kind of little obstacle I had with this, it becomes pretty clear it's not that she's trans. She has adopted a male persona initially to escape a situation at home, but then also to be able to participate in the war on this, what she considered to be a very moral battle. It is not a case of her being a trans character. Trans person. I'm sorry. When I say character, you know what I mean. She was a real person. Very interesting story. I have read, I know that there were a lot of women who did this during the Civil War. This is the first nonfiction I've read about it. I have read fiction about it. There's a book I loved called I Shall Be Near to You, by Erin, Lindsay, McCabe, that I loved. Same, it's a fictional story, but it dealt with the same sort of thing. And I think it's done really well in this. Fascinating. Our second Union person is Elizabeth Van Loo, and she is really interesting because she is in Richmond, Virginia. So, but she comes from a family that has roots in the North. So she's not truly a Southerner, but she lives in the South. But she's also very wealthy and very much a part of the community in Richmond, Virginia, and she is an abolitionist. That doesn't go over well. And she does start orchestrating a spy ring. And this spy ring proves to be sort of incredibly consequential to the outcome of the war. So this is not a little thing. This is a big spy ring. It's pretty much like Culper spy ring during the American Revolution. She's very interesting. Like Emma Edmonds, slavery is a very moral issue to her. Abolition of slavery is a moral issue to her. Before the war, what she would do is she would basically purchase slaves and free them. She would educate them. She had none of the servants that they had, who I am assuming were all African-American. That's an assumption. It doesn't actually say whether that was the case in the book, but I'm assuming they were all African-American. None of them were enslaved by her. She had emancipated all of them. So her feelings on this are well known. But she's also part of the community. And so if you aren't from if you didn't get U.S. history, you aren't in U.S., Richmond it wasn't initially, but it became the capital of the Confederacy. She is in the same social circle as Jefferson and Varina Davis, though he was the president and the first lady of the Confederacy. In fact, she has one of her friends. I don't even think this woman was a servant. I think it was someone she had emancipated and paid to get educated. All of this, but they worked together, and she had this woman, Elizabeth or Mary Jane. Some of the names go undercover as a maid in the Davis household as a spy. And she does attract a lot of suspicion. And she just very carefully, she's very worried, of course. She's very worried for her safety and for everything, but she's able to kind of sidestep it as well. She's helped quite a bit by her brother. And this was something that was really interesting. So her brother, they talk about it at the beginning, and I really wish I had tabbed this because it just made me think. When we first start this, we meet her brother. She's living in this big mansion, family mansion. She's an unmarried woman, but her brother's wife, and their two kids live there. And her sister-in-law, her brother's wife, is very pro-Confederacy. Really does not like the fact that she is married into an abolitionist family, which you would think that would come out beforehand, but whatever. And it comes to a part where she takes the kids and runs off to the family farm. And then I wish I had the exact terms because it's in my mind, and I cannot believe this is actually what it said, but definitely this was the gist of it. She basically went on a bender. I don't know what that means. How does a woman from the upper class in Southern society in the early days of the Civil War, so basically still antebellum, go on a bender? Anyway, I just thought that I'm very perplexed by that. Anyway, then Elizabeth Van Loo's brother goes and gets the kids. So Elizabeth Van Loo's also raising these two children. and her brother's children. Her brother at one point gets conscripted into the Confederacy, so that's a whole thing. She is a very noble character. Like, both Emma Edmonds and Elizabeth Van Leeuw are people to be admired greatly. They are really coming from a place of their own personal morality in the choices that they make. And I find them both very inspiring. Now let's turn to the Confederacy. So here we have Rose O'Neill Greenhow and Belle Boyd. So there is sort of a stereotype of the Southern woman, the Southern belle. And I've always wondered, is this really a stereotype? And based on this book, it's not a stereotype. That's very much it. So I'm going to start with Rose O'Neill Greenhow. I always forget the order of her names. So she is, she's Blanche Devereaux. She is a woman. She's actually, at the beginning, she's in Washington, D.C. And she is middle-aged. She's in her late 30s, I think. I think she's about that. She's what would have been considered middle-aged, but she's a widow and she is hot to trot. And so she's kind of out on society because they know about her gentleman callers. And she's not ashamed of them. And she starts her own little spiring going on. And she's pretty brazen about it. She has several children. I think they're all girls, but the youngest one, little Rose, still lives with her. Because she's so brazen, Alan Pinkerton and the Pinkerton detectives find her out pretty quickly. And she and her daughter are sent to like the Union prison in Washington, D.C., which I thought that was really interesting. And again, this is me putting 21st century ideas onto a 19th century history. But I just found it very bizarre that they took her daughter too, because her daughter's like 7. And they're in prison together, and Rose is very non-apologetic. She's not going to apologize for anything she did. She's just going to continue doing it. Finally, they basically say, look, we'll let you go, but you have to go to the Confederacy and you are never allowed to come back onto Union lands. And she does that, where she continues her behavior just out there. And then she is sent by Jefferson Davis to Europe, kind of as an unofficial envoy, a lay envoy, and she does her thing in Europe, and she's quite the character. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say about her, because she's quite the character. And then we have Belle. I'm going to put a picture, because I don't want to say anything politically incorrect or shaming or anything like that, but I'm going to put Belle's picture up here. So Belle is a teenager at the beginning, and she is capturing men's hearts everywhere, and she uses that to become a spy, and she's very spunky. And I'm looking at this picture and I'm reading about her exploits, and I can only call to mind the opening line from Gone with the Wind, which for reasons I have memorized, which is, Scarlett O'Hara was not beautiful, but men seldom realized that when they were caught by her charm. And I said, oh my God, that's Scarlett O'Hara. So she's very spunky. She is like running back and forth across lines. She's in the part of Virginia that does break off and become West Virginia, and that becomes a bit of an issue for her as well. And she is flirting, and she is out to get a husband, but she is also spying, and she is hot to trot for Stonewall Jackson. There's like, whoa, this girl she's got it. She's definitely in the hormonal age. So with both Rose and Belle, they were entertaining to read. They were entertaining characters. I recognize that Karen Abbott probably went into this with a bias, and I am okay with that because I have the same bias. I don't have sympathy for the Confederacy. Now, I know my husband has, just ancestors who were, fought for the Confederacy, but they were poor farmers, and not everybody was like this. And I know, I have heard that. It's like, 30s and 40s Germany. Not everybody was a Nazi in Germany. And even some people who joined the Nazi party weren't actually Nazis. They did it for self-preservation. I have read The Book Thief. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about two women who took the initiative to join this war effort. And just as with Emma Edmondson and Elizabeth Van Loo, this was a real moral calling on their part, it was also a moral calling on their part. It's just their morals were wrong. I don't want to say wrong. They were not ones that I respect. So now Rose said a lot of really racist things that you would expect from a woman in her position at the time. And there's a bit of that with Belle as well, although they also talk about her maid Eliza, who stayed with her even after emancipation and all that. Fine. That doesn't change the fact that they were supporting an immoral system. I don't have sympathy for them, and I don't have sympathy for their cause. And clearly neither does Karen Abbott. And I'm okay with that. Just saying, I'm okay with that. That is something that's there. That being said, they were pretty entertaining to read. They were a little eye-rolly at times, but again, we're talking Blanche Devereaux and Scarlett O'Hara. So there you go. Karen Abbott does take us through these women's lives, so we know what becomes of them, and how they passed on, and one might still be with us. Anyway, really, this was the book I needed right now, especially after The Demon of Unrest, which again, that was not a bad book. I read it at a bad time, or read the second half of it at the bad time. This is the book I needed. Probably, I was kind of like, wish I could this, what stars, because you know, star ratings, I don't really care, but 5-star is something that I pay attention to, and I said, gosh darn it, this was 5 stars. People could argue with me about it, I don't care. This was a book that hit me at the right time in just the right way, and I needed it, gosh darn it, so 5-star book. Okay, the 4th book I finished this week is one that I buddy read with Angelia at Read and Reread, so please go check out her channel. I think that right before I filmed this, I saw she had a channel out, so I'm pretty sure she's already talked about it on BookTube. And that is The Mighty Red by Louise Erdrich. So Louise Erdrich is an autobiographer for me. Like if I had to, it's like, who are my top 5 current authors, my 5 that are currently writing right now? Louise Erdrich is there. It's Louise Erdrich, Louise Penny, William Kent Kruger, Alice Hoffman, and I don't know who else. There's only 4. I pre-order this from Birchbark. I always get her books I don't buy used copies of her books. I get them from Birchbark because I either get them signed or they come with like a nameplate I can put in. And I also just feel it's appropriate to buy her books from her bookstore. Not happy about that, which is not a sticker, by the way. That's like printed on there. Anyway, I pre-ordered this the moment I heard about it. And then as soon as I got it, I was like, oh, right in the middle of books. And then Angelia and I decided to buddy read it, which was perfect. So this is an interesting book. And so I enjoyed my time reading this book. And it has some very Louise Erdrich things in it. We're in a small town. We meet a lot of different characters that all are drawn very well. There are native characters. Two of our main characters, Crystal and her daughter Kismet, are indigenous. There are characters who are not indigenous. There are secrets. There's a little bit of a mystery. All that is wonderful. There's some wonderful, just typical Louise Erdrich writing in here. Wonderful. Not my favorite Louise Erdrich though. And as much as this is the thing, again, I enjoyed this book. It just isn't, let's put it this way. This is a better book than this is, if that makes any sense. There is a storyline. It's an environmental storyline that is introduced late in this book, which I found very, very strange because it's actually, for me personally, I found it a very compelling storyline and I would have liked a whole book about it. I think that book's already been written. It's called The Seedkeeper by Diane Wilson, but there you go. But it was introduced so late, it was very confusing to me as to why she waited until that point to bring it out. Unless it was there the whole time and it was just so subtle that I didn't pick up on it, and that is a possibility. So there was that. Some of the, now, if you have seen me in the past, one of my big pet peeves are like people who make characters who make stupid decisions over and over and over again. And that does happen with the character here. However, we are given enough context and enough backstory with this character to kind of understand why they do it. It was still frustrating, but it didn't hit me the way this would normally hit me in another book. So that's a good thing. That being said, there were other characters that I kind of felt maybe needed a little bit more explanation. There was that. There's a bank robbery thing, which I'm still not quite sure what the impetus behind it was, having read this book. And even when I was talking to Angelia, she was kind of the same way, like, is this really what was going on? So there's that. Also, the ending of this book, and this surprised me because Louise Erdrich's pretty good at endings, and this one was not a super strong ending. There are a number of sort of vignettes where we catch up with some of the characters at the end, which is fine, except we're catching up with characters that we never really met earlier in the book, and I'm like, why am I reading this? Why? I don't understand. I think if she had pruned some of that ending, it would have been a stronger ending, and really focused on the characters that we had focused on throughout the book, would have been a lot more interesting to me. So not my favorite Louise Erdrich, but still worth reading. Still, I enjoyed my time with it. They can't all be The Sentence or whatever book you think of, whatever Louise Erdrich book is your personal favorite. For mine is The Sentence. They can't all be that. That's fine. I posted about this on Bookstagram and someone asked me, where should I start with Louise Erdrich? This is not a bad one to start with, to be honest. Because it's not her best, you still know there's better to come. But it still gives you a taste of what her writing is like. So this is not a bad place to start. But to be fair, I think you can start with any of Louise Erdrich's books except Future Home of the Living God, only because, and that is a very good book. It's a better book than this one. That's a good book. It's not that it's not a good book. It's because that book is so atypical of her writing that it would be a weird way to start with her writing. So, but yeah, if you've never read Louise Erdrich, this is not a bad one to start with. So just know that there's, she has books that are better than this. So there you go. Anyway, that was my week. As you've probably seen from the choppiness of this video, I am starting to lose my voice, and I have some other videos I want to film today. So I'm going to end it now. As I said, I may not be watching videos or commenting at all next week. We're just going to have to see how productive I get myself to do this. Anyway, like, subscribe, join my Discord. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.